the book I had, or not even the book, the author I had was Rushdie. I kind of refer to him as Rushdie, so I can't really. Salman Rushdie. And this is all about how Rushdie almost died. See? Because I took die. Alright. So, he wrote a novel in the late 80s called The Satanic Verses. And what the Satanic Verses is, it's about two Bollywood Indian Islamic actors who travel to England, and they're about to take another flight, and these two Bollywood actors are named Farishta. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. The second one is named Cham. We'll call him Cham. I think it's Cham. Cha, Chamcha. You can take that as how you want. But so these two Bollywood actors, they get on a plane, and while this plane is over the English Channel, it is hijacked and it explodes. But for some reason, these two people magically survive. But once they come back into consciousness, each one of them are no longer themselves, but instead something else. For instance, Farishta has become the Archangel Gabriel, which is the Islamic version of our Archangel Gabriel, who talked to Mother Mary. And then Chamcha actually turned into the devil. And so what the rest of this novel is basically is, these two people are trying to piece together their lives, what had happened before the explosion, and trying to find who they were beforehand. And during this time, the person Farishta, who had become the Archangel Gabriel, has these dream sequences, and there's 3 of them. The first one being a Muhammad. It's definitely an allusion to Muhammad, but it's not in the book. It's not spelled the same way. It's kind of the British version. If you ever seen the English version of spelling of his name. And he goes around, and it's about him finding these satanic verses, which is basically him kind of giving holiness to these pagans and whatnot and then finally he renounces them. The second one is about a little girl who's getting revelations from Archangel Gabriel, and the last one is about a 20th century very religious man named Iman. And so the story keeps on going, and these people are trying to piece together these lives. It turns out the person who had converted into Archangel Gabriel, he's suffering from some kind of mental illness. He eventually pieces together his life. He finds out about his girlfriend that he had before the explosion, which was a famous English rock climber. And so eventually it gets to a point where this dude is he becomes so mentally ill that he ends up killing his girlfriend and commits suicide, and then his friend who had converted, the other person who had converted into Satan, eventually moves back to India and decides to stay there. And so that's basically the story. But really, and it was difficult to actually interpret stories, especially without the help of Mr. Canner, because he's definitely great insight, especially in books. But so this is basically me trying to interpret a book, and I don't know if I actually got the right things correct, but it's whatever. So what I took away from this book is that that perhaps religion, I'm not talking about the whole God part, I'm not talking about God and things, I'm talking about the human part of religion, the doctrines and the scripture and everything that is run by a human on earth, did not have the 20th and the 21st century in mind when creating their religions. Here in the United States and other Western civilizations, we kind of come to this idea that religion should be something private. You do it at home, and you don't really add religion into other things. Maybe you do, maybe your moral standards, but really, we kind of, Sunday you go to church, but really for the rest of the week, I mean, I guess there's some people who are really Christian and they keep track, but you have that set day aside. Well, over in the Middle East, definitely with religions like Islam, it's definitely, something that's every day. They 5 times a day they have to pray in the direction of Mecca. It's something that's ever present. And so when these two actors come to Britain, which is definitely like the whole idea that we have in the United States about religion, they're kind of conflicted, and it's hard to, kind of assimilate to the culture in Britain at the time, because, religion really isn't as outspoken in that area. So, I kind of see it as like in the Bible when you have Babylonia or whatever, and they have the great temple, and then God comes down and he makes all the people start speaking random languages, and he splits them all across the earth. Well, I don't think anybody back then was expecting that one day we would have computers and technology, and one day globalization would occur, and we can, on a blink of an eye, we can go look what's happening in China or India or whatever. So basically, I believe that we've recreated the whole Babylonian towers and stuff, and we've connected so much, and therefore I believe that Rushdie, he approves of this. He approves of globalization. He believes of the assimilation of cultures, and he wants that to occur. But he says that religion doesn't really have a place in it if the religion kind of holds you back from doing so. One interesting thing is that because when this novel came out, it was very controversial, especially in the Middle Eastern countries, in places like Pakistan. In fact, the Ayatollah of Pakistan, named Ruhollah Kine, I'm not going to try, I'm sorry. He actually ordered a fatwa, which is an Islamic order, to have Rushdie killed. And there were several assassination attempts, not only on Rushdie, but also his translators. In fact, one of them was actually successful. It was the person translating the book into Arabic, but it's interesting to note that he is not Arabic himself. He studied Arabic and the Islamic faith at the University of Tokyo. His name is Hitoshi Igrashi, and so I think that's really interesting because he kind of embodies that idea that Rushdie is kind of expressing, the whole globalization thing. He is a Japanese man who studied Islam, and he's translated a book into Arabic. I think that's very interesting. So yeah, what was I going to say? I was going to say another thing. Takeaway from this cancer talk that you should not fear assimilation. You should look into every culture and try to be part of it.